Hey guys, I just got out of the shower. Sorry, I really am a no frills, no makeup, t-shirt and jeans kind of girl. But I was so excited because I've been waiting forever to get one of these and I want to show you what it is. I'm going to unbox it right here with you guys so you can see what I've been waiting for so long. I guess I should have got some scissors. Hang on. Okay, I've got some scissors. So, try not to cut myself. What is it? This may not be exciting to you, but it's something that I've really wanted for a long time so I could try out. And I figured, why not try it out with you guys for the first time? So, here it is. It is, let me get it out of the plastic. You can probably already tell if you've been baking for a while. A tart pan, the kind where the bottom comes out. It's a 9-inch tart pan. So let's get this washed up and let's make a fresh peach tart with some pastry cream with fresh filled flour together. Let's get started. Check out the description box down below. I'll have a link to this recipe and I'll have a couple other links with this tart pan if you want to take a look at it and get one so we can make it together, and a whole lot of other things that I use often and recommend, and other recipes as well. I'll see you there. We might quite possibly need this also. And while I was washing the tart pan, I needed to wash just a few other things as well. Okay, so we've got it ready. It's all ready to go. So let's go ahead and get started on the tart crust. Okay, so we're gonna mill our grains. So I like to weigh my wheat berries. That way I know that I'll have that exact same amount of flour. And I feel like that gives me the most accurate results. But for the recipe that I will post a link in the description box below, I will go ahead and put the weight in grams. Also, I'll put the volume and the volume of wheat berries. So we're going to go with 180 grams of the wheat berries, and it'll give us 180 grams of the soft white wheat flour. So let's get to milling. Okay, so I'm just getting my mixer out with my cookie paddle, and we're going to make sure to put some butter out, 1 stick or 1/2 cup of butter, and we want to set it out so it softens. You can see this is really nice and soft. We're going to put this in our mixing bowl. You could do this with just a hand mixer. You just want to be able to incorporate the softened butter with the sugar and salt and egg yolk and all that so it gets all evenly combined to make our tart crust. I don't want to miss any little bits of butter here. And you can spray your tart pan, or I like to just do this. My sister taught me to use this leftover butter wrapper. I'm just going to use this and kind of paint it all over. Use this and paint it all over my pan here. And get it in all those crevices. and set that aside. So to that softened butter, I'm going to add about a 1/4 cup of sugar, and then this is my homemade vanilla. I love to make it from scratch. I'm going to experiment with some different alcohols, but we're going to use about a 1/2 teaspoon of this. I can put a link to the video where I show you how to make your own homemade vanilla extract. And we also added a 1/8 teaspoon of salt. We're going to mix this together till it kind of lightly creams together. Not quite like we're making a cake or a cookie, but just a little bit so that everything's all incorporated. We need to make sure that we scrape down the sides as needed. We don't want pockets of sugar or butter that's unmixed somewhere. We just want it to be all incorporated together. And for this, we're going to use 1 egg yolk. I know sometimes it can be intimidating to have to separate eggs, but it's really not as hard as some chefs may make it seem. It's pretty easy. I just use the shell and an extra bowl, go back and forth. If you break the yolk, it's no big deal. It's going to be mixed into this dough anyway. So once we get most of the egg whites out of there, I'm going to put that into our sugar and butter mixture. And if you want to use this egg white for another recipe or as an egg wash for one of your other baked goods, that would be fine, but we're not going to use it in this recipe. So let me get my hands washed really quick, and then we will head on to the next step. And that next step would just be mixing that egg yolk right in there with our butter and our sugar, just until it's all combined and incorporated. And we may need to scrape our sides down here as well. So once this is all looking all incorporated, this is our beautiful soft white wheat flour that we just milled for this. I had it sitting aside. I'm just going to put this flour amount right into my mixing bowl, and we're going to start slowly mixing to incorporate this flour right in. Again, we'll need to scrape down the sides as needed so that there's nothing that's unincorporated in here. We want it all mixed evenly. Okay, this is looking great. It's kind of like thickened gravel. If I were to grab it with my hand and squeeze it together, whoops! That's all right. We'll just pick it up and put it back in. The counter's clean. So if I were to pick this up, put it in my hand, and squeeze it together, it would stay together. If it continues to fall apart or crumble, you probably will need some more melted butter or softened butter, or use less flour. You can always put the flour in slowly and not have to put it in all at once. So once this mixture is the texture that I like it, I'm going to grab that tart pan that we oiled or buttered earlier, and I'm just going to dump this straight into my tart pan, and I'm going to use my hands to squish it in. But we want to make sure we did get all of those crevices nice and oiled or buttered. So let's get all of this out of the mixing bowl here. You can see it does look dry, but it comes together as we squish it. While I'm pressing this in, I'm looking for the total thickness all around to be about 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch thick as best as I can. As I'm pressing this down, we need to make sure that we try to keep it as evenly as possible. I know for tarts, some people will put this crust in the refrigerator and then roll it out later, but I find that this worked really well, and it was so much easier and actually came together much faster. So I'm going to continue to do this. I just want to make sure that I'm pressing it down and all up the sides, and then try to make sure that that corner area isn't too thick or too thin. So I did the best that I could, and I think it turned out really great. But now you can see that the texture of this tart crust is no longer gravelly. As you're working with it, it softens, the butter softens even more in your hands, and just the dough all incorporates. It just makes a really lovely textured dough for this tart crust. Okay, and to keep my tart crust from puffing up and just becoming too large to hold any fillings, I'm going to use a fork and just lightly press holes with my fork all through the bottom of the tart, maybe about 1 inch apart from each other, give or take. If you have pie weights and you'd like to use the pie weights, or if you have dried beans, dried rice, whatever, you can line this tart crust with some foil and then put whatever you want to weight the crust down before you bake it, because we're going to be pre-baking this before we put any fillings in, because the filling part is actually fresh and nothing is going to be baked. So we're just going to bake the tart crust and then fill it and then chill it, and it'll be ready to eat. So if you want to use the pie weights or anything like that, feel free to do that. I don't have any, and I decided that this would work just great, and spoiler alert, it did. All right, we're going to cover this and let it sit in the fridge for 30 minutes, and towards the end of that, we'll preheat our oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. So while my tart dough is chilling in the refrigerator, I thought I would come outside and just enjoy some of this beautiful weather that we're having. And the tart crust, it seems to be super simple to put together, and I guess it is ready to go just as fast as it takes for my hair to dry. And now that it has been chilling and all incorporating, it's ready to bake. Okay, so while the tart crust is baking, let's go ahead and get started on the pastry cream. We're going to start out with about 45 grams of soft white wheat flour. So we're going to go ahead and get that milled, and then I will take you over to my little induction top and we'll go ahead and get started cooking the pastry cream. Soft white wheat. Okay, so you can see it's not very much at all. We're just going for like 3 tablespoons of the flour. So I'll go ahead and mill this. Okay, that didn't take very long. Let's head over to my induction top. All right, we're at the induction cooktop. I'm just going to use like medium high, and I'm going to put about 2 cups of milk into my saucepan here. I'll make sure to put a link below for the pastry cream also. We're going to be using the sugar in the recipe is going to be divided. So I'm using a 1/4 cup of the sugar into this part of the recipe. We're going to use a whisk, and we're going to whisk this around in the saucepan, and we're going to bring this not quite to a boil, but we want it to be pretty hot to where we see the steam coming out. But we want to make sure that we are staying right here by our pan and not leaving it side, because we don't want it to burn to the bottom, we don't want it to boil yet, and we don't want to scald anything. We're just basically heating up the sugar and the milk just for a short period of time so that we can use it to temper our eggs later. And don't worry, I'll walk you through tempering the eggs. I know that can be intimidating, but we can do this together. If you're a beginning baker and tempering eggs sounds extremely scary to you and you want to try a nice custardy type dessert, I have a banana pudding that you can make in the microwave. I also have the most amazing, incredible lemon bar recipe, and it does not require tempering any eggs. I will make sure to put a link to both of those in the description box below as well. They are both amazing. All right, so we're going to make sure we stay close by, stirring occasionally when we need to, while we work on this second part. So what we're going to do is take the rest of the sugar from the recipe, and we're going to add that into our bowl here. We want to make sure this is a heat-safe bowl because we're going to be putting in hot liquid. In a future step, we're going to add cornstarch or potato starch, some kind of starch, and we're going to put that in here, and then that fresh milled flour that we added. And then we're going to add just a little bit of salt just to balance out the sweetness. We're going to mix these ingredients together until they're all combined. Again, going back and mixing our heating milk mixture occasionally. And we're going to be using 3 eggs for this. 2 whole eggs and 1 egg yolk. We're going to take these eggs and just crack them and put them into this mixture that we made. So we're going to do 2 whole eggs right into here, and then just separate out that other egg. Again, you can put the white in with the other white from the tart crust if you want, and you can save those egg whites up for something else, but we won't be using it in this recipe. So I'm just going to get this little bowl here we used earlier so I can divide this last yolk out of here. Then I'm just going to go ahead and wash my hands before I finish this. For this pastry cream, it's kind of, I guess, like a custard or sort of a pudding. People use it a lot in eclairs or cream puffs, things like that. Watch out for, in the future, I plan on putting out a cream puff recipe. That's a spoiler alert that only you, if you've been listening this far into the video, will know. I haven't told anybody else yet. but that is in the making. But I'm just going to use this fork. You could also use the whisk, whatever's easier for you, and make sure that I beat these eggs really good and incorporate them and mix them all throughout with the rest of those ingredients so it looks smooth and cohesive and just kind of like one mixture. We are going to temporarily turn off the heat for this step. And then comes the fun part. At least I think this was kind of fun. So I used just like my metal measuring cup. You could use a ladle. You could use whatever you really want to use, but you're going to put this into your hot milk. The milk should be kind of steaming at this point. And we're going to take about a third of that hot milk mixture and we're going to pour it into this egg mixture while we're stirring. So don't stop stirring. We don't want to make scrambled eggs and we don't want this to curdle or anything like that. So make sure we're stirring while we pour the hot milk in until we get to about a third of this hot mixture. Then the eggs should be tempered and they should be nice and warm. We're going to take the egg mixture and pour it back into our pan with the milk mixture while it's being stirred. We're going to make sure to turn the heat back on and we're going to bring this mixture up to a boil while we're continuously whisking. We want the mixture to boil for 1 minute and then we'll turn off the heat. Lots of stirring and whisking. This is one of my favorite jobs because if you know me at all, you know I love to stir. I don't know why, it calms me. I love it, and my family can tell you this about me for sure. I often can be found stirring if I'm helping out with a recipe for anyone. So as you are whisking and stirring this together, you will notice it will start to thicken. And it kind of thickens pretty quickly, I think, since we started with such a hot liquid. But as this thickens, you'll notice it'll start to bubble and boil. Again, we wanted that to do that for 1 minute to cook out the flour taste and also to activate the starch that we decided to put in here to help thicken the pastry cream. That way when we slice into it, it'll hold its shape and not just kind of blob all out. Of course, it'll thicken up as it chills as well in the refrigerator. But I went ahead and set a timer. There you can see the bubbles. I set a timer for 1 minute. Continued to stir this. We don't want it to burn on the bottom. We don't want it to scald or scorch. Don't make sure that you're making this dessert when you don't have a lot of interruptions. Otherwise, you may end up having to start over again. But after we're done mixing this around for that 1 minute, and for some reason, when I'm waiting and whisking and stirring for 1 minute feels like forever. But eventually it gets there and we have that nice thick texture that we like. Then we will turn off the heat and stop cooking. And while this mixture is still hot, we will stir in our butter and our vanilla. And after we turn off the heat, we want to remove it from the heat so it stops cooking and we don't have to whisk so vigorously. And this ended up being just about perfect timing because our tart shell just finished baking. So it is done and I gotta let this just cool down. The crust bakes for about 20 to 30 minutes. And we want to make sure that it is set. It looks a little bit dry, not wet anymore, and it should be a medium golden brown. And you can see that we got the perfect coloring on of this. We do want it to let it cool before we add any of our fillings. And we're going to go ahead and take this pastry cream and put it into another container that can handle a little bit of heat so that we can let this cool down faster. And then we're going to cover this and put it in the refrigerator so it can chill before we add it to our tart crust. Okay, it is my understanding that this will develop a thick skin on it if it's not covered pretty quickly. So when we cover it, we want to make sure that it's actually touching the pastry cream all the way around. And this isn't too hot, it's just a little bit warm. And then I'm going to let both of these cool down before we try to assemble anything. Because this is all the baking we're going to be doing. This is going to be a chilled portion. So now that everything has cooled and chilled, I've let the pastry cream chill in the refrigerator. It's time to assemble our tart. So I'm just going to pull off the cling film plastic wrap here. and just start spooning it into the tart crust. And you can see how nice and thick and velvety this texture is. It's just perfect for this tart. So today we are making a fresh peach tart because that's what I have on hand. And we decided to top it with also some nice fresh blackberries that we got from a local farm co-op. But I really think that this tart, the traditional just mixed berries on top, would be phenomenal. I think it would be even better than the fresh peach tart just because of that sweet goes with the tartness, and it's just so good. And even the next day, this becomes even better. I'm just trying to sort of evenly smooth out the pastry cream as best as possible into my tart shell. That way it's, all even. All the way around. And then after it's all smoothed out, I'm going to cover it again with plastic wrap, making sure that I press the cling film all the way around to touch and stick to the pastry cream. I know that seems wrong. It seems like it's just going to rip it all off when we take it off, but because we added that butter, it really helps that cling film not to stick. So I didn't have any issues with it sticking, but we're going to put this in the refrigerator for about 1 to 2 hours, and this is going to help it set up to be nice and firm before we top it with our fruit. So while that is chilling, I really tried to make the best use of time as possible, but Matt was willing to go ahead and peel the peaches and then slice them for us so we could layer the top of the tart with that. So I suppose you could probably leave the peelings on for the tart if you like the look of that, but we just decided to go with peeling them today. And also the outside of some of these didn't look super great. And then I originally had a nice big bag of peaches, and I was worried I was going to run out because when I pulled the bag off, it looked like there was a couple with some pretty rotten spots on them, which I was kind of disappointed about. But luckily we were able to get these 2 nice, really juicy, delicious peaches that we could use. So he's just slicing them up really nice and thin as he can get them, so that we can layer them on the top of the tart so it looks nice and pretty. You can see here, sadly, these are the ones that aren't so great looking and they were moldy, so I really didn't want to use them for this recipe, especially because these peaches were not getting cooked and they were just eaten fresh. And now it's time to go ahead and just start assembling. So you can get creative here and get as decorative or as non-decorative as you'd like. We just put the peaches fanned out all the way around in a circle. You could use all kinds of mixtures of fresh fruits. Whatever sounds good to you, whatever's in season, go for it. Give it a try. I'm sure no matter which fruit you choose, it will be delicious. And after all the peaches were on, we thought it just looked a little bit plain, and I found like 4 or 5 black raspberries that we still had left in the refrigerator. So we went ahead and sliced those up and piled them in the middle, and I think it looks kind of cute for summer, like a little sunflower. And I would say the blackberries were probably one of my favorite parts on this with that pastry cream. They just complemented each other so well. All right, so now we're on the last step. If you wanted to do that finishing touches and make the fruit last a little bit longer and look nice and shiny, all you need to do is have some apricot preserves or apricot jam. You could even use peach jam or peach jelly if you wanted, but you're going to take the apricot preserves, put just a little bit, maybe even a couple tablespoons, and put it in a microwave safe container. Add a little bit of water to that container, microwave it until it is liquidy, stir it around, and we're going to brush this all over the top of the fruit. Now, they recommend that you brush it all over the top of any of the sliced fruit. You don't necessarily need to brush it over top of berries because they keep their own shine. But I went ahead and just brushed it over top of the entire tart. This actually the next day soaked into that pastry cream and tasted so good in the morning. I know this recipe seems intimidating because of all the steps. It was actually a lot easier than I expected. I was kind of letting this recipe get the best of me, making me too scared to make it. So I was super excited to be able to finally tackle it. I think it turned out amazing, and we will make it again with different flavors and different things. And if it's something that's making you be a little bit intimidated or scared, don't worry about it. Just try it. If it fails, at least you learned something from it. It probably will still be delicious. Doesn't really matter what it looks like. Just give it a shot and maybe the results will surprise you. And now it's time for the unveiling, and I'm not gonna lie, this is the part that I was afraid of the most, was to pull the bottom out. But this came out so easily. I don't know if it was the pan that was awesome or that we buttered it or what happened, but it came out beautifully. I had no cracking, no crumbling, nothing went wrong. So I was so happy with that. And now the biggest test of all was to cut into the tart. I was pretty sure when I was putting in the pastry cream that it was going to be solid enough to cut this just from when I was mixing it up. But it's always something you're a little bit scared of when you cut into something that has a smooth or soft texture. You're not sure if it's just going to all spill out everywhere or what. But as you can see, it's sliced beautifully, and this worked out perfectly. And you can see those nice layers. Not bad for my first tart, if I do say so myself. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today while we got to try something new, a fresh peach tart. It turned out really well. I'm excited to enjoy this. Don't forget to check out my blog at grainsandsmallplaces.net where you can find this recipe, the pastry cream recipe, and a whole bunch of other recipes dedicated to fresh milled flour. So I will go ahead and pop a few videos up here or here. That way you can enjoy those between now and my next video that I release. And thank you for stopping by Grains and Small Places. Goodbye.